now a city councilwoman for the city of Kingsburg, which is down the way, right? And she is only 20 years old. So we have what, 17-year-olds here? 16 years old, 15-year-olds? So not that, much older than you guys. So it is exciting, again, to see young people get involved and say, you know what, I'm not going to wait for someone to represent me. I'm going to run because I believe I can bring good ideas and make a difference. And guess what? People get elected if they do the work, right? And if you connect with people. And so she is right now a community college student at Fresno City and is representing District 1 in Kingsburg. So Kingsburg is a small area. I think she had lost and had already, what was interesting, if you follow her, and you can follow her on social media, but the night of the election, she had won, and she had actually conceded to the other woman that she was running against. She, I think, was down by like 19 votes or 9 votes, something like that. And lo and behold, a couple weeks later, once the provisional and late ballots came, I think she only won by a handful of votes, like very, very close. But again, an example of how, and hopefully all of you guys that have the privilege of voting when you guys get to turn 18, and if you are 16 and aren't registered to vote, you can already pre-register, which is exciting. You could be pre-registered and then run for office in a few years from now. We're seeing these real stories just right here in our backyard. So it's a possibility, and she is definitely an example for all of us that are young, driven, and want to make a difference in our community. Another young woman, this one is related to actually Millie South. Her name is Esmeralda Hurtado. She just actually got appointed. It was a vacant seat of her sister that she left, and so they just appointed. She's also still a student attending Fresno City College. Youngest person to be sworn into the city council. Again, 21 years old, right? So very young. But I wanted to highlight these young people because they're examples, right? They're more relatable to us and closer to us. So definitely show us. So what I say, the future is women. Sorry, gentlemen. I'm just seeing that. I'm seeing a trend of more women actually stepping up. And I'm excited to see that happening at the state and then at even the smaller cities. One thing that has not happened yet in the city of Fresno is that we've never had 2 women on the city council, ever. There's only been 1 woman at a time serving. So I'm hoping to see the day in the near future where we have more than 1 woman represented at the council level. And the reason why I say that is one of my main mottos, what I've used, and I didn't make it up, so I won't take all the credit. I heard it on probably one of the conferences that I've attended where I've heard speakers. But if you're not at the table, you're on the menu, right? So what it's important for me as a woman, we do bring a different perspective to the policy discussions that are happening. So I want to encourage all the young women here, hopefully, many of you guys, and you don't have to go into political science or government to run for elected office. You can be, a scientist, an engineer. You can go get a different degree, and then you can decide that you want to run for office. So you don't have to just do politics. But again, very important when it comes to representation. So I'm going to get to the city council. So this is District 1. This is the council that I represent. This is right here, the tower. You guys are familiar with the tower? We're in the tower. The Fresno High area also is part of the Tower District, but this is Olive Street. So I represent District 1 from Olive all the way to Shaw Avenue. And west of the 99, all the way to like Grantland. So a very large district. It's about 78,000 people right now. So it's a very, very larger, I think, than even like Kingsburg, right? Kingsburg is a small, tiny town. But again, so I have the responsibility of representing this area, and I'm accountable to those voters. However, I also have to keep in mind that I represent the greater city of Fresno, right? So when I make decisions, my decisions, yes, are based on what my constituents say, but also what is going to be the best decision for all the residents of the city of Fresno. And so to date, and it's a change also, so that blue wave spilled over to actually to the city of Fresno. So prior to today, we actually only had 4 Democrats and 3 Republicans that's on the council, because you have 7 districts, and then our mayor today, Republican. I think the only Democrat mayor, which was back in the 80s, was Karen Humphrey, but this was before the city of Fresno was a strong mayor form of government. What is a strong mayor form of government? Anyone know? No? Well, I'll tell you, just very simple. Do you guys know the form of government that we have in Sacramento at the state level? You guys know we have a governor, right? So governor, and then we have the legislature, which includes the assembly and the Senate. Well, very similar. The city of Fresno operates in a similar fashion, where the mayor, he is the executive. So he's like our governor. And the council members are the legislators. We are the ones that propose policies and the ones that approve the budget. The mayor proposes the budget, and then we have to decide if we agree. And if we don't agree, we change it, and then we pass the budget. So very similar to how the government in Sacramento functions. And so what we saw in Fresno was a shift. And I will say that in my perspective, I'm excited about what the makeup of the council today, because there are individuals that got elected. They're a little bit more younger and have presented ideas that I believe are going to move our city in a good direction and help, in particular, families, working families, that may have felt that they didn't have the representation. So, mentioned I'm the only female on the city council. I got, I think in the history of Fresno, there's only been 7 other women in the 100+ years that have represented any one of those districts previously. And then, as I mentioned earlier, the first Latina to serve on the council as president. And so just proud of that, because I believe that it shows young women and other young people the possibilities that exist within our community, and that we too deserve to be at the table. So District 3, which encompasses the downtown area and then southwest Fresno, is Miguel Arias. I don't know if any of you guys are familiar with him, but he actually used to work for Fresno Unified as the Chief Information Officer. He was just elected as the Vice President for the City Council. And he also used to be the trustee for the State Center Community College prior to coming on the council. Then we have Nelson Esparza, who is in District 7, Central Fresno, and he is only 28 years old. So again, another young person that stepped up to the plate. And previously, he was a Fresno County Office of Ed trustee, so trustee in terms of being involved in the educational field. He's also an adjunct professor at Fresno City College down the road, similar to me, and just got elected as part of this last election cycle. District 7 was previously represented by my former colleague, Clint Olivier. He was a registered Republican, leaning more libertarian, so it was very, his policies, the policies that he supported were very interesting, because he could work both with Republicans and Democrats. So it was interesting to see kind of where he landed on issues. But now today we have, again, Nelson Esparza representing District 7. And then finally we have Luis Chavez representing District 5. This is in southeast Fresno. And so he has been on the council over 2 years. He was elected during a special election because the county supervisor used to serve in his seat left early, or Sal Quintero, who was his boss. He worked for Sal Quintero prior to getting elected. And then also he was a former Fresno Unified trustee. So as you guys can see, kind of from the different elected officials, they have a little bit of a different journey. Some are in elected office before. I had no elected office experience before, but was involved with politics by working for other elected officials. And then you saw some of the other young people had no, obviously very young, had no elected official experience before running for their first office or the council office. So, couple things. So now with kind of the change, this blue wave that has come to the city of Fresno, I believe there's an opportunity to address a number of the issues that I've been very passionate about over the last 5 years. One of them being affordable housing. So every day we see more and more homeless in our community. That has to do with a combination of things. One, housing is expensive. Two, and there's mental health, drug addiction issues that plague also our community and our homeless population. But when we're talking about a long-term vision to address some of those issues, we have to talk about affordable housing development in our community. And so with the new council, I believe there's a willingness and general support to invest more in affordable housing, make it easier for developers to build housing and multifamily housing that people can afford. So one of the startling statistics here in election cycles, we elect more women and that they can also serve in that role. I was elected in 2015, and so just a little bit about my election. I wasn't the traditional candidate. In fact, when I started, I was kind of the underdog, and there was 7 of us that ran in June, which is it was a June primary in 2014. I got sworn in 2015, and the night of the election, the primary election, I actually came in second place by 30 votes. So a lot of people still, especially the young people, don't vote at the same rates as the older population. And so what it taught me was what my political professors taught me throughout my education was that your vote does actually matter. So 30 votes is, a very, very close race. So I came in second place by 30 votes. On an election night, in fact, I had lost by 20 votes. But there were still provisional ballots. For those of you that don't know, are those ballots that get sent in late to the clerk, and they are not counted that night, but are counted on the subsequent days. So on election night, when the projections were coming out and Channel 30 was covering and all this local media, the night had closed. The votes had been counted that the clerk had, at that point, and I was 20 votes behind. However, I wasn't too sad about it because what I started seeing over the election night returns was that I was getting a lot of support, and every new number would show that I was advancing. And so lo and behold, I think it was a couple weeks, maybe 2 weeks later, I actually won by about 600 votes. So it was a very, very close election. 600 votes is still very, very close. So again, always for me, it has been kind of a teachable moment where when you guys hear your vote matters, it does matter. And I'll kind of point out a couple other elections in this last election cycle where, again, we were taught over and over again that our vote really, really matters, especially in these local races where you're running for city councils or some of the other school boards. Really, these local votes make a big difference. As mentioned in my introduction, I did go to Berkeley and am a UC Davis alumni of the law school. So I am a licensed attorney. I haven't really practiced. My background is in immigration law. What I've dedicated myself is to public policy and public service. And so I've had the opportunity to work in Sacramento for a number of senators and elected officials, and also, as mentioned, in the White House. And I have learned a tremendous amount, both doing work at the state level and at the federal level, which has helped me connecting the dots here when I'm trying to do the work to represent not only the District 1, but the city as a whole. And as you guys heard, very active on a number of committees because a lot of work gets done in these boards and committees. And so I've just been active in those boards that I feel I can make a positive contribution and also be a voice for those communities that traditionally don't have a voice. One thing that I want to share before I get into kind of the full-blown presentation of the political landscape and the changes is that while, you know, UC Berkeley and UC Davis sound so great and you guys may think, oh my gosh, she seems like she has the perfect life and it's been, you know, pretty rosy. I will say that it was a tough road and there were some setbacks in my educational journey, but I didn't let those setbacks you know, push me down. They motivated me. They made me stronger to continue on. And I'll just mention two that I want to, you know, highlight. I'm an English language learner. So English was my second language. And so when I went to UC Berkeley, I wasn't prepared academically. I went to a small, way smaller school than Fresno High. It's in Lindsay, which is about an hour south from here. And so grew up with parents that couldn't help me with my homework because they didn't speak any English. They're farm workers, immigrants to this country. And so they had limited resources. And so the challenge in transitioning was very tough. My first year, actually, I didn't pass my English language class. I had to have a remedial English my first year. And it was a 6-unit class. So it was intense because they were trying to get me up to speed to my other peers, and I didn't pass. And I like to share that because many of us as students go through those moments, and what is easier is that we throw the towel away and we give up, right? When we have those challenging moments. But what I did, I said, you know what? I'm going to go back, take the class the second semester, and do it again. And I did, and I passed it with an A the following time. Similar, years later, when I graduated from UC Davis School of Law, you have to take what is called the bar exam, right? I don't know if any of you guys are interested in law school. You have to take a bar exam, similar to kind of the SATs. You know, there's all these exams that we're required to take. And so in order to be admitted, I had to pass it. It's a very, very tough exam. The California bar exam is probably one of the toughest. It compares to New York. And so guess what? The first time, I didn't pass it. And again, it was a moment in time where I reflected and I was a little bummed. And you do have the moment where you question yourself. Am I really prepared to, you know, go on and to be an attorney? Should I try it again? Because when you take it the second time, I think the percentage of the passage rate is significantly, I think, in the 20-some percent, which is very, very hard once you're a repeater. But guess what? I said, I'm going to do it again. And a lot of that motivation comes from the sacrifices that I saw my parents did for me to have the opportunity to be not only be born in this country, but have the opportunity to have an education where then I could go back and come back to my community and give back, not only to the young people, but to the communities that for many years have felt that they don't have a voice. And so, lo and behold, after the second time, I ended up passing the bar exam. And those for me are very proud moments, and I like to share them because they were challenges. So my life hasn't been perfect. I grew up poor, but I'm a testament to what you can accomplish when you work hard, when you don't give up, and when you're committed to giving back to the community. So I'll go on. So just a little bit now to transition more into the talk about the blue wave. So I'm going to start kind of big picture what we saw, and just going to go back to 2016. So it's going to be limited scope, nothing more than that. But if we see kind of the makeup in 2016, we had a presidential election, right? President Trump got elected. And so at that time, there were more Democrats actually in the House of Representatives. Does anyone understand the makeup of the U.S. Congress? So we have U.S. House of Representatives and we have senators, okay? So in the House, election results in 2016, when President Trump got elected, we saw a major shift where Democrats had lost seats. And so we see that in that year, there were only 194 Democrats elected and 241 Republicans. So favoring the Republican Party. And so in the last 2 years, there's been a lot of individuals that have been mobilized by what has been happening at the national level in terms of some of the rhetoric. I will say personally, I was troubled by a lot of the anti-immigrant rhetoric that was happening, where I felt that even working families were being attacked. And I think that we saw a lot of that kind of on the ground and mobilizing young people, Latinos, that there's big percentage of the Latino community and other immigrant populations kind of, get motivated and interested at what was happening at the national level. So what we begin to see in 2 years, there was a lot of mobilization of voters on the ground, and we begin to see, and we saw a huge shift, which is what they called the blue wave. So we went from 2016, 194 Democrats to 235 Democrats. So the Democrats took the House of Representatives, now is being led by Nancy Pelosi, and the Republicans lost a number of seats. The undecided here that I have actually was already decided. It went to the Democrats, and it was actually not too far from here, the district. TJ Cox, does that name sound familiar? So he actually won the seat that is right here in the center. Very also close race, right? On the night of the election, he had actually lost by, the numbers that were counted. But again, lo and behold, days later, I think about 7 days later or something like that, when all the late absentees and the provisional ballots were counted, he had won, I think, by, again, like 500 votes or maybe a little bit more. But it was a very, very contentious and close race that was being watched by the nation. So it was a very high-profiled race. So that's what folks call kind of the blue wave. And so that gives us the picture of what is happening nationally, right? There is a movement of folks that had been unhappy over the last, I would say unhappy with what is happening at the national level. And it showed in terms of people turning out and voting for the people that they believed would best represent them. And so we saw that shift. So if you see California, I'll give you guys a little bit of a closer look. You guys see how, and so the Central Valley, this is the Central Valley, right, tends to be a little bit more leaning to the conservative, on the conservative side, which is why we see here, right, it's all red. And I think this is the only which includes the city of Fresno. This is Jim Costa. Have you guys heard of Jim Costa? He's your guys' congressman and my congressman. He represents this area. So this is the only, real blue area in back in 2016. What we saw a shift, right? We gained this seat. This is TJ Cox's seat, and then we gained a number of seats here down south. And I said we because in all full disclosure, even though the city council's nonpartisan seat, I am a Democrat. So just, if you guys can't tell. Hold on. So we gained the 7 seats again here, just to show you guys the blue, right? These are the seats that we gained in the state. And so many of us also see that here at the regional level and specifically at the local level, we also have witnessed what is being called at the national level the blue wave, where more Democrats were elected. And so we begin to see a shift with that. And what that means at the national level, you've seen Democrats wanting to challenge the notion of the building of the wall, of having a little bit more power in Congress to challenge the president's proposal. So now he's going to have to find a way, and both the Democrats and Republicans in the House are going to have to figure out a way to move policies forward in a bipartisan way. I think that that's what's going to have to happen in order to be able to advance anything at the national level. Then I'll move on. So at the state level, we have the state assembly, which is the lower house, very similar to the House of Representatives, and we have the California Senate. So we also saw a major shift at the assembly level in terms of change in seats. So in 2016, and already California is known to be a state that is majority Democrat, and in this last election cycle, they already had 55 Democrat seats out of the 80. So they had a majority. However, with the blue wave, what we saw was that it went up to, and I think it might be 60. So it was 60 Democratic seats. So now they have a supermajority. And with the supermajority, folks, have been challenging the notion that now they don't have to work with the Republicans to pass anything that needs a supermajority vote because now they have, all these Democrats. And that is yet to be seen, right? But, that is definitely a big shift as well here in the state, seeing the jump. And, just 5 makes a difference, again, getting the state assembly, which is the lower house, to a supermajority. They can do a lot more if they're able to rally all the Democrats to stick together. And that doesn't happen all the time because even though, you have 60 Democrats, there's a spectrum also within the Democrats. There are Democrats that tend to lean more liberal, and there are Democrats that tend to lean more moderate to conservative. And so these folks have to figure out what issues they're going to be able to work together in a collaborative fashion if they do want to reach that 2/3 for a bigger initiative. A 2/3 vote usually allows them to put something on the ballot or override governor vetoes and so forth. So it gives them a little bit more power. And so we saw these changes. That too close to call eventually did change to blue, but we did see, the district really, the assembly districts in the blue shift more and gain more seats. So we can see. In the valley, it didn't change too much. We already have this seat and this seat here. That represent, this is Assembly Member Salas, and this is Assembly Member Arambula. Have you guys heard of Assembly Member Arambula? He represents all of us. So now to the blue wave in Fresno. And so as of 2015, if we look at the demographics of our city over time has become majority Latino or Hispanic origin. And so we are beginning to also see that be reflective in the voters that live within the city. In fact, the city of Fresno has more registered Democrats than Republicans and non-party or decline to state folks. And also, if we look at how the voters have voted here in the city of Fresno over the last few decades or the last couple election cycles, presidential in particular, they actually, majority of folks voted for President Obama, and also majority voted for Hillary Clinton in the 2016 presidential election, even though she did not ended up winning. But the majority of voters here in the city of Fresno did vote for her. What was exciting for me in this last 2018 election was that we had some of the highest voter turnout when it comes to what we call a midterm election. A midterm election is when there's no president on the ballot, right? So that is the midterm election. Generally, you have the highest turnout in a presidential year. That's when everyone gets interested, right? There's a lot of more kind of media coverage as to what's happening. And so we all, those that have the privilege of voting, want to be able to, participate. And so that's why you see for presidential elections, the voter turnout be the greatest. But this last election cycle, in a midterm election, everyone was surprised. Even the political pundits were surprised because they saw the highest voter turnout since 1914. And it is exciting, right? Because we are a democracy. And so our democracy is only as strong as our participation. And so that's how we strengthen our democracy, which is why I'm very passionate about engaging young people early on as a young person. You guys may not see me as that young, but I still consider myself young. I'm in my 30s. But as a young person, I feel that it's so important for young people like your guys' selves. I know, how many 18-year-olds do I have in the room? Any? Okay, one. We still have some young ones, okay? So we'll get to make sure we influence you to go out and vote. Whatever party you want to register, doesn't matter, but get out and vote is so, so important. And so that excited me, though, this number really, seeing that we hadn't voted in these numbers since 1914. That is pretty unbelievable. And so what we saw was that this turnout also reflected what happened here locally and the changes that happen at the local level. I'll say one of the biggest surprises, so remember I told you guys we have the Assembly and the Senate for the state as well. So this district, which previously actually was held by one of my old bosses, Senator Michael Rubio, he was a Democrat and he ended up leaving early. So there was a primary election in 2013. And so in 2013, Senator Andy Vidak ran. It was a special election. In the special election, when only one thing is on the ballot, people hardly turn out to vote. So it was a very low voter turnout. So generally, those types of elections, it's older voters and more conservative voters that turn out. That's just kind of statistically what the odds are. And so in 2013, Senator Andy Vidak won, who he was Republican and was a farmer from Hanford. And what was surprising in the election returns was that our senator now, Millie South, got elected. I think a lot of people discounted her. We didn't think that there would be a shift because it's hard to challenge incumbents. Once you're in office, it's very, very hard. Did you guys hear about Alexandria Ocasio? Have you guys heard of her? Yeah? Some of you guys? She's out from the East Coast, a congresswoman now, very young. I think she's either 29 or 30. And she beat an incumbent. He was there for like 30 years. So it's possible, and I think more and more young people are showing that they are viable candidates, that they bring good ideas, and that people connect with them. And so that's what we saw with Melissa Hurtado, and she won. She's now the youngest state legislator at the Senate, and she's 30 years old. Formally, and she was only on the council of the city of Sanger for about a year and a half. So she just got elected not that long ago. And again, she beat an incumbent in 5 years. So very, very surprising. But again, the demographics and the makeup of this district, it includes Fresno County, Tulare County, Kings County, and Kern County. Very rural district, heavy Latino. I think it's like 60% Latino. And also, majority are Democrats that are registered to vote. However, just because there are people that are registered and majority may be Democrat doesn't mean that it's going to reflect what the outcomes of the election, because it's all about who goes out to vote. That's what's important. But what we did see again, this was a total surprise, but for me it was a nice surprise to see her win and have her now represent us at the state level. And she's already doing some awesome stuff with legislation to make sure that at the county level we have enough mental health resources and plans to be able to address suicide prevention in our community, which is a big issue that impacts us, especially young people. So exciting. The next person I will highlight is Julia Hurtado, not related at all to Melissa Hurtado, but she is in Fresno, is that sometimes families are paying about 60% or more of their income goes towards housing. So imagine if your family is paying more than half of your family's income goes to either their rent or their mortgage if they are fortunate to be buying a house. That means they only have a little bit of money to buy groceries, to pay their bills, to be able to buy you clothes or any other amenities or cars and so forth. And so that impacts also our local economy. The less disposable income our families have here in the city of Fresno, the less money goes to the city of Fresno in sales tax. Sales tax and property tax are what build the city of Fresno's budget and are what funds parks, police, fire. And so you wonder why sometimes we're short-staffed when it comes to police and fire, because our budget we don't have enough dollars in our budget to be able to fund all those resources that the 5th largest city in the state of California needs. Again, because we do have a problem of poverty in the city of Fresno. And so that's one of the issues that I'm hoping to continue to work on. Actually, right here, not too far, McKinley, right here, McKinley and Blackstone. You guys probably will start seeing some construction in about 9 months. McKinley and Blackstone, it's going to be an 88 housing unit, so it would be apartments that's going to have, first floor is commercial. There's going to be a clinic there, and we're going to also build a neighborhood senior center in that facility. But those are things that I care about, and that hopefully in this next year we're able to invest more for our community to address those issues. Then I have youth investments. So one thing that I've been very passionate, as I mentioned, is giving opportunities to young people. So in the last 5 years, what I did, the first year that I was elected, proposed the creation of a youth commission. Have any of you guys heard about it? Did you guys know that the city of Fresno has a youth commission? So we have one person. So now all of you guys, and hopefully you guys will spread the word, and we want you guys involved. So you guys can be kind of mini council members, right? You guys can be part of this commission. I have the opportunity to appoint 2 young people. Since I represent Fresno Unified and also Central Unified, I like to pick 1 and 1 of the applicants to have a fair representation. And you get to make recommendations to the council about things that you want us to address. And we've done that. So in the first couple years, what the young people told us, do any of you guys have jobs? Any part-time jobs here? 1, 2, okay, 2. Do any of you guys want to be able to have a part-time job while you guys are going to school, to learn, to earn a little bit of money? Any hands? Yeah? In the summer, while you guys maybe, if you guys don't have summer school, right? So guess what? The young people, the commissioner said, hey, we want a summer internship program. So guess what we did in the city of Fresno the last 2 years? We began to invest. It's right now a tiny part of our budget. The first year was $25,000. This last year was $50,000. And we are putting young people to work in our parks, at our airport, at City Hall, trying to expand the opportunities for you guys. One short story, my first paid job, because I actually went to the fields to work with my parents when I was young on the weekends, but when I got the opportunity to work, I was 15 years old, and it was through a summer youth employment program in the city of Lindsay, and I worked for the Public Works Department. So the irony, right, as a 15-year-old, my first paid job was for a city. And now, lo and behold, right, I'm representing the 5th largest city. So those opportunities definitely open, the young people, your perspectives to the possibilities that exist out there. And I think they're important because it teaches a little bit about financial responsibility, how to earn a paycheck and how to use that paycheck wisely. So I'm going to continue to work on making sure that we invest more. My goal is to create thousands of jobs over the next 5 years for people like you guys. That is my goal. So right now I'm working with the private sector, with the educational institutions, so that we all put our resources together and commit. I'm hoping that we can get the city of Fresno this next year to commit $500,000 to create jobs for you guys over the next few years. So that you guys could work at our parks, work at our airports, at City Hall, for our transportation department, for our planning department, so you guys can get experience in all those different sectors. The other thing that I've done also for youth is a young council member program. And so If none of you guys have, I don't think I see any of you guys have been in the program. Oh, right here, yeah, last year. So one person has done it. This is going to be our third year now doing it. And you get the opportunity to work with our office for about 6 months. And every month we meet and we touch upon different areas. So our first meeting is actually going to be this Saturday. The program already started for this year. But you get to learn about local government, what we do, like police and fire. We get to go to Facebook and Google. We get to go learn about energy jobs, like in the oil industry or clean energy jobs. And so there's a whole different slew of areas that we cover so that you guys get the opportunity to learn what has not only happened here locally, but the opportunities that exist outside of Fresno. And so that's what I've done. The other thing, a couple other issues that I've worked on is parks for South Fresno. So it's been I'll go forward. So what we found since I've been in office, we have a need of $112 million in deferred maintenance. Deferred maintenance means that we have a lot of problems in our parks that need to get fixed. With it, our irrigation systems, our grass is not growing, our community centers don't have the proper AC, our bathrooms are not functioning well. So if we go and we did an assessment of all our public parks and our facilities, we have $112 million that need work in our parks. That's a lot of money that does not exist in our budget. And because we are about 120 square miles with over 500, almost 550,000 people, the ratio of park space that we need is 1,113 acres. We are way behind in park space and recreational space here in the city of Fresno. So this last election cycle, citizens put Measure P. I don't know if you guys saw a lot of signs out there that said Measure P out because they realized that there's a huge need for recreational activity. And it's not just green space. Do any of you guys go to any parks? Sometimes, a few, yeah. Around here, there's not really a lot. We've done some work with Fresno Unified and Central Unified to do joint use, to get creative and leverage resources. So I know Fresno High is open for some weekend activities. So we also do joint use on our pools. So we work with the school district to be able to open the pools to the neighborhood because actually in my district, I only have 3 parks. I have the district with the least amount of green space. So one of my goals is to increase that and to make it better. I'm working on a new plan for Quigley, which is up the street. That's the closest park to this area, to renovate it completely because it needs a lot of TLC. And so what was sad, you guys would think 52% would have meant that Measure P passed, and that would have been millions of dollars for fixing our parks. Actually, 52% wasn't enough because this measure, according to some folks, needed a 2/3 majority to pass, and it was short of that. So we will see what happens in the near future if there is willingness again to bring a measure back up to help support our parks and maybe even our public safety. Then the other thing that, one of the issues that I've been passionate about is immigration, right? You guys heard that I did immigration law when I was in law school. Just kind of naturally, I think our personal experiences, our life experience shapes kind of what we value and some of our personal passions. And so for me, it's been immigration. So over the last, I think 4 years or 3 years, I've tried to figure out how we can better create policies to integrate our immigrant community, especially in the last couple years. I believe in what we've heard, the stories that I've heard from immigrant families. People have felt under attack and that they're not welcome. And so what we wanted to do, and we actually just passed a resolution this last week to signify to our community that we recognize that the city of Fresno is a city of immigrants. This city was, created by immigrants from all over the world that first came here, even before, maybe some Mexican immigrants that came here. We have Armenians, we have the Portuguese, we have a number of different, we have Hmongs, we have all sorts of various immigrant groups that have come to Fresno. And so that's why I say our community is a community that is a community of immigrants, and it's what gives us our strength. And so through this resolution that we passed, we said we're a city that welcomes everyone, regardless of your background. And we wanted to make sure that the immigrants had representation that as part of the policy process. And so we created this advisory community to, again, promote integration, citizenship, and make sure that they have a seat at the table. I think that's the last, and I think I'm pretty, I'm at my point. So yeah, I want to take any questions. Again, I'm super excited about just being on the council again for a second term. I just got reelected this last year. I had no one challenge me, which I guess was a little bit exciting. I didn't have to run a crazy campaign, but I think it is a testament of the work that not only I do, because I don't do everything by myself. You guys saw Julie in the back. Julie is staff in my office, and so we have a strong team that works together, interns, part-time college students, and my core staff, my permanent staff that really helps address a lot of the issues that happen here in the city of Fresno. So with that, I'll open it to you guys if you guys have questions, comments, reactions.
How did you become part of the internship?
The internship program for the summer? So the city will probably be posting the job description and the application. I'm thinking like in April or May. So just watch out for it. You guys should follow me on social media. I have Facebook, I have Instagram, I have, what else do you guys use? Twitter, yeah, I use Twitter too. So follow me, and I constantly post stuff like when there's opportunities for young people. Also like about my young council member program. And I also do internships in my program, and I pay a little stipend because I don't think that we should just rely on volunteerism. I think volunteerism is important, but you guys already do enough volunteerism that I want to be able to reward the students that work for me, and I give them a little stipend. And you can be a high school student and work for me during the summer. So follow me. You guys will see those posts, but that will happen later in the springtime.
And too, okay, we talk a lot about perspectives and different perspectives, and you talked about women a lot and the perspective that women bring to politics. But you mentioned young people a lot. I'm curious, what are your thoughts about how a younger generation influences politics?
So I think young people bring a lot of value to discussions because issues that we may not think about, you guys raise. Like, for example, the Youth Commission. That was a perfect example of how young people said, hey, the city of Fresno doesn't have any summer jobs. They're very limited, and it's very competitive to go work for Starbucks or McDonald's. You're competing with college students, especially high school students. And it was young people like you guys that were high school students that said, hey, the city of Fresno should invest in us. They should invest in a summer internship program. You guys should be putting more towards parks. And that's what the younger perspective can bring. Similar to a woman's perspective, I'll give you guys one example, even with the woman's perspective. In the city council building, if you had walked in there in 2015, January, I think 10th, I got sworn in, there were no baby changing tables in the bathrooms for men and women. So one of my best friends who went to my swearing in had a little baby, and unfortunately she had to lay her baby on the ground, in one of the handicapped toilets because we didn't provide amenities for moms and even dads, because there are dads that come to City Hall, right? But had I not brought that forward, today we wouldn't have baby changing tables. We would not have a nursing room for employees. So we want to motivate our moms and encourage our moms to nurse, right? And so now they have a space. Before, the moms had to either, if they had the privilege of having a door, they had to close it and pump in their office. Or some, I've heard horror stories of having to go pump in a toilet stall. That is so disgusting and degrading. And it shouldn't have to be, because that's the food that you're going to feed your child, right? None of you guys would want to go eat your food in the toilet, right? Or prepare your meal in a bathroom stall. And so women, for many decades, have had to do that because they don't have the spaces. Those are the types of perspectives that begin to shift, and we begin to imagine. If I wouldn't have brought that up, I don't know if any of my, with all due respect, I don't know if any of my male colleagues would have brought it up. So today we still would have had no baby changing tables in the bathrooms. I think maybe recently in the state of California, they passed a law that now public facilities, whoa, lo and behold, now it's 2018. Now all public facilities should have baby changing tables in women restrooms, but also in men restrooms, because men are dads and they take their kids around too, So those are the types of perspectives that we begin to see shifting in our community, and that impact when you're talking about being in a political atmosphere in a world where you're making laws. Anything else?
Hi, so I'm just inspired by your story of how you're able to represent women in politics, and also the way that you talked about young people becoming more politically active. So were there any ways that you, when you were younger, when you were in high school, were involved in politics, or was that later on?
It was pretty much later on. It's a good question. So one of the programs that I did, and there's a number of programs similar to this, was a leadership program my sophomore year. It's called the Chicano Latino Youth Leadership Program. Not everyone may, feel like they can apply to that program. They accept everyone, but it is geared towards Chicano Latino youth. There are other similar organizations that do for Black youth. It's a Black youth leadership program also in Sacramento. So I did this program when I was a 10th grader, and so that was kind of my first exposure. And I got to travel to Sacramento, stay at Sac State for 1 week, and I saw a few people, not a lot of people that looked like me in Sacramento at that time. That was in 1998, and so that was kind of what inspired me initially to get into politics. But the other thing that inspired me to get into politics was my grandfather in 1992 became a U.S. citizen. He came here during the Bracero program. I don't know if you guys learned that in history. That was in the 50s, right? When we went to World War II, they brought over a bunch of Mexican farm workers to work here. And so my grandfather was one of those workers. And so lo and behold, he came back later after World War II, and he legalized his status during the Reagan era. During the Reagan era in 1986, and then in 1992 he became a U.S. citizen. It was the first time that he had the ability to vote in 1992 during the Bill Clinton election. And so I saw him be so excited about having the privilege of voting that he otherwise wouldn't have had he not become a U.S. citizen. And so that to me kind of planted a seed in me that I was like, you know what? He cares a lot about this, and this must be important, right? And so it was kind of those moments that along the way, I don't come from a political family, like I mentioned, my parents, my mom had a 9th grade education and my dad had a 7th grade education. So I don't come from, educated or a privileged family. So, but it taught me along the way those little moments that I somehow needed to become politically involved. And so after college, that's when I became involved more politically. Anyone else? Okay, good.